Well, folks, it seems our old pal Donald Trump is back to his old tricks. And by tricks, I obviously mean throwing a giant, legally questionable wrench into the already sputtering gears of American democracy. This time, the wrench comes in the form of one Ed Martin, a man whose commitment to the law is about as firm as a chocolate fireguard left out in the Arizona sun. Yes, Trump has appointed Martin to not one, but two significant positions within the Department of Justice. Buckle up, because it's about to get bumpy. Now I know what you're thinking. John, who on earth is Ed Martin? And that, my friends, is a perfectly reasonable question. You see, Martin is a man who thrives in the shadows, a legal zealot who pops up in all sorts of interesting places, usually leaving a trail of chaos and raised eyebrows in his wake. He's like the legal equivalent of that weird smell in your nan's attic. You know something's not quite right, but you'd rather just ignore it and hope it goes away on its own. Sadly, for all of us, this particular smell is not going away anytime soon. In fact, thanks to Trump, it's about to get a whole lot stronger. So what exactly are these two incredibly important jobs that Trump has bestowed upon his loyal legal lapdog? First, Martin will be heading up the freshly minted Weaponization Working Group. Now I'm not sure who came up with that name, but they deserve a raise, preferably one paid out in the tears of Lady Justice herself. It's like calling a pack of wolves fluffy bunny protectors. The name might sound cute, but we all know what they're really up to. Secondly, and perhaps even more alarmingly, Martin will also be taking on the mantle of U.S. pardon attorney. That's right, folks, he'll be the one deciding who gets a get-out-of-jail-free card, and if his past behavior is anything to go by, those cards are about to become more common than those annoying flyers people shove in your hand at train stations. So, to recap, Trump has essentially handed the keys to the legal kingdom to a man who thinks the justice system is less of a system and more of a suggestion box he can just ignore whenever he feels like it. What could possibly go wrong? Now, you might be wondering how Martin managed to snag these plum positions, given that his resume reads like a laundry list of ethical violations and questionable legal maneuvers. Well, it turns out even the Senate has its limits. You see, before blessing him with these new roles, Trump originally wanted to install Martin as the U.S. Attorney for D.C. However, even some Republicans balked at that idea, with Sen. Tom Tillis, RNC, playing the unlikely hero by blocking the nomination. Apparently even Tillis, a man who makes Mitch McConnell look like a bleeding heart liberal, couldn't stomach the idea of Martin running the legal show in the nation's capital. But hey, if at first you don't succeed in installing your unqualified crony in a powerful position, just create two new positions and give them to him anyway, right? That's classic Trumpian logic for you. Let's talk a bit more about this Weaponization Working Group, shall we? It sounds like something straight out of a dystopian novel, and frankly, that's not far off the mark. This delightful little group, the brainchild of Trump-appointed Attorney General Pam Bondi, another shining example of legal expertise, has been tasked with investigating Special Counsel Jack Smith's ongoing investigations into, you guessed it, Donald Trump. Yes, you heard that right. The Department of Justice is now investigating itself, specifically the parts of itself that are investigating the former president, who just so happens to be the one who appointed everyone involved in the first place. It's like watching a dog chase its own tail, except the dog is on fire, and the tail is made of subpoenas. Section 5, pardon me, more like pardon him, and then there's Martin's other little gig, U.S. Pardon Attorney. Now the pardon attorney is traditionally a relatively low-key position, mostly dealing with requests from people who have already served their time and are looking for a clean slate. But with Martin at the helm, you can bet your bottom dollar that the pardon office is about to become the hottest club in town, and the only cover charge is a signed photo of Donald J. Trump. Already there's talk of Martin reviewing a pardon petition from none other than former Representative George Santos, the man who lied about, well, pretty much everything. And let's not forget about poor Liz Oyer, the previous pardon attorney who was unceremoniously fired for having the audacity to refuse to recommend restoring Mel Gibson's gun rights. Yes, you read that correctly. Apparently, in Trump's America, refusing to give a violent anti-Semitic alcoholic access to firearms is a fireable offense. But overseeing a pardon mill for political allies is all part of a hard day's work. Section 6. A history of controversy. Now some folks might say that I'm being a tad harsh on poor Ed Martin. They might argue that everyone deserves a chance, that we shouldn't judge a man before he's had a chance to prove himself. To those people I say this: have you met Ed Martin? Because this is not a man who lacks a track record. This is a man who spent the better part of the last few years as a prominent Stop the Steal enthusiast, a movement that, lest we forget, culminated in a violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. This is a man who, while serving as interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., because of course he was, used his position to represent January 6th defendants, and even went so far as to reassign or dismiss prosecutors who had the audacity to actually try to hold those people accountable for their actions. This is a man who has publicly threatened Elon Musk with prosecution for unethical behavior, which, coming from Ed Martin, is a bit like being called ugly by a toad. Section 7 Cheers and Jeers, Reactions to Ed's Encore. As you can imagine, the reaction to Martin's appointment has been somewhat mixed. On the one hand, you have the usual suspects on the right, those bastions of legal and ethical integrity like Charlie Kirk, who praised the move as a victory for conservatives against the liberal deep state. Because apparently, draining the swamp now means filling it with even more ethically challenged swamp creatures, as long as they have the right political affiliations. On the other hand, you have people who actually care about the rule of law, people like Senator Adam Schiff, who called Martin unfit for the job and warned of his dangerous agenda. And then, of course, there's me, your humble narrator, who can only look upon this whole situation with a mixture of amusement and existential dread. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, except the train is filled with legal precedents and the wreckage is going to cover the entire American justice system. Section 8. The DOJ Department of Just Us. So what does all this mean for the Department of Justice? Well, folks, I'm not a legal expert, but I've seen enough episodes of Law & Order to know that this can't be good. With Ed Martin at the helm of two crucial divisions, the DOJ is now at risk of becoming little more than an extension of Trump's own personal vendetta machine. It's a terrifying prospect, and one that should give every American, regardless of their political affiliation, pause for thought. We are witnessing the systematic dismantling of the very institutions that are meant to hold our leaders accountable, and it's happening right before our very eyes. The rule of law is being eroded, replaced with the rule of Trump, and the consequences of this shift will be felt for generations to come. Section 9. The Long Shadow of Trumpism. The appointment of Ed Martin is not just another example of Trump's penchant for cronyism and chaos. It is a stark reminder that Trumpism, that toxic cocktail of authoritarianism, grievance, and disdain for democratic norms, is alive and well, even after Trump himself has left the political stage. It is a reminder that the fight to protect American democracy is far from over, and that the stakes have never been higher. So buckle up, America, it's gonna be a bumpy ride, and if you see Ed Martin lurking around the halls of justice, do yourself a favor and run the other way. Trust me, you'll thank me later.